This video is brought to you by NordVPN. UK newspapers are having a bit of a tough time at the moment. The fraction of Brits reading newspapers has fallen from about 60% to just 14% in only the last decade, and many established papers like the Daily Mail and the Telegraph are struggling to convert their readers into online subscribers, raising fears of bankruptcy in the near future. But one paper is apparently bucking the trend, and that's the Financial Times. Obviously, the FT has a booming online presence, but even more impressively, it's the only newspaper whose print circulation hasn't declined and the most trusted newspaper in the UK on both sides of the political aisle. So in this video, we're going to have a look at the UK's print media landscape, how newspapers' business models operate, and how the Financial Times won the broadsheet wars. Quick disclaimer, the TLDR journalist who wrote this video previously worked for the FT, and TLDR itself has previously worked with the FT on a couple of entirely separate offline projects. Despite this, the FT had nothing to do with this video's production, nor any knowledge of its release. So let's take a look at the UK's print media. British newspapers traditionally fall into two main categories, the tabloid and the broadsheet. As well as the differences in size, tabloids tend to allocate much more page space to images and headlines compared to broadsheets, which have longer text and often go into more detail. They also prefer different content, as tabloids generally go for popular news, including community and celebrity news, human interest stories, and those with lifestyle themes like sport or fashion, while broadsheets focus more on hard news and politics with a serious tone. We should also mention that aside from the daily newspapers, there's also the major political magazines, which are generally produced once a week. So where does the Financial Times fit in? Well, it was formed in 1945 from the merger of two small London-based publications founded in the 1880s, focusing on, you guessed it, financial news. Over the next decades, the FT remained primarily focused on global business and market journalism, but things started changing towards the end of the century with the rise of globalization. Its foreign news coverage rapidly expanded in the 1970s, and there was barely another paper that employed as many full-time foreign correspondents as the FT. It also increased specialist coverage of Europe, and circulation passed 250,000 for the first time in 1986, with a quarter of sales coming from overseas. Printing began in New York as well as London and Frankfurt, and the Financial Times became fully international just as it hit 100 years old in 1988. But how does the FT's business model work, and why is it in such a strong position? Well, we're going to look at what we see as the four most important reasons. Its strong print presence, its early adoption of online subscriptions, its diversified revenue streams, and perhaps most impressively, its credibility. So we'll start with circulation and distribution, and we should first define what we mean by these. In a print media context, distribution is the act of delivering content to various outlets, including supermarkets, newsstands, corner shops, and online platforms. Circulation, meanwhile, is the number of copies of a print publication that are distributed and then read or viewed by an audience. Now, in the UK, distribution is really interesting. The publisher News UK, a subsidiary of Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, runs its own printing company called News Solutions, which is the largest printer of newspapers in Britain. It prints around 40 million papers a week, or 2 billion a year, which is over 32% of the market. And it doesn't just print News UK's own titles. In addition to Murdoch's The Sun, The Times and Sunday Times, the company's three printing sites also print the FT, the Telegraph, the free commuter paper Metro, and the London Evening Standard. Every day by 6:30 in the morning, more than 55,000 retail outlets across the UK and Southern Ireland get a fat delivery of newspapers to sell to the public. The publisher DMGT, which owns the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday, the Eye and Metro, is also in talks with News UK to combine their printing operations to try and ensure a sustainable future for newspaper journalism. But which paper actually gets picked up the most? Well, tabloids tend to have a much higher circulation than broadsheets, as they're generally smaller, cheaper, and enjoy a wider appeal. So compared to the FT, which was bought by Japanese media company Nikkei for $844 million in 2015, the DMGT's papers, mainly the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, and Murdoch's News UK, so the Sun, the Times and the Sunday Times, are read by far more people in the UK. But when we take declining print circulation into account, the competition changes. Print circulation has dropped by more than 60% over the past 10 years, and continues to fall annually. But the only newspaper not to have suffered a drop in circulation last year was the FT. Impressively too, the FT weekend paper, which offers longer, more in-depth pieces, essays and arts journalism, has seen circulation increase by double digits in the past 2 years, showing an appetite for more thoughtful journalism. Business analysts at the FT say the paper is seeing stability across core sales in all markets year on year, while the other British print newspapers are falling far behind. One probable reason for this is that lots of banks and businesses in the financial sector have FT enterprise subscriptions, which they're unlikely to cancel. But another factor might be the FT's strong social media strategy. By growing their presence on platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, the newspaper has focused on attracting new individual followers who they hope to convert into paying subscribers over time. The FT's online following dwarfs that of other British newspapers, apart from The Economist, which are struggling to maintain readership. Another strength of the FT is its online subscriptions model. While the tabloids still trump broadsheets in terms of online viewing figures, their articles tend to be free to read, and content is often unoriginal and rapidly churned out. But according to the Reuters Institute at Oxford University, news is moving towards a paid-for content model, with more outlets now introducing some kind of paywall online. The number of people willing to pay for news is also increasing, suggesting the biggest challenge to traditional print media is how to deliver high-quality content that can be monetized online. This is where the FT has long been ahead of the curve. The FT hit 1 million digital subscribers in 2022, having first introduced a paywall 20 years earlier. The FT pioneered what's known as the metered access model in 2007, before moving to paid trials as its primary model in 2015. Building up its online subscription model for over a decade put the FT way ahead of the other British newspapers, who have only recently started introducing paywalls and free trials. Next up, revenue streams. The FT has also diversified its revenue far beyond the scope of a newspaper. It was quick to recognise that as news goes digital and print circulation falls, media organisations would have to find new niches to bring in money and ensure sustainability. Now, you might not know this, but the FT runs a whole host of other side projects that generate revenue. There's FT Live, a conference and events business, FT Strategies, a media consultancy, FT Professional, a B2B business intelligence publication, and it also organises its own workshops, events, programmes and festivals, like the annual FT Weekend Festival. The FT has also invested heavily in podcasts, leading to 25% annual growth in audio advertising revenues as its series collectively reaches 62 million downloads in 2022. So what differences does this make? Well, an FT Strategies report looked at 450 global publishers to work out why some were successful and some were not. It found that news publishers need 4 additional revenue streams beside their core income, each providing a minimum of 15% profit. Obviously, this is a lot easier for a massive organisation like the FT than an independent newspaper. But while the UK's other big commercial publishers, so DMGT, News UK and Reach, all have additional sources of revenue other than newspaper sales and advertising, these aren't always linked back to the same brand. Here's where the FT's reputation comes in. By clearly affiliating all of its other revenue sources with the newspaper, these services immediately appeal to an existing customer base that knows and trusts the FT as a brand. Crucially, this trust has been built over decades of impartial, factual reporting and editorial rigour. Articles are fact-checked by multiple people and go through several rounds of edits before they're approved for publication, which has led to the Financial Times being viewed as not just the most trusted newspaper in the UK on both sides of the political spectrum, but also the most trustworthy media organisation in the UK. There's also the brand's visual consistency, as the newspaper and its other services are instantly recognisable by their salmon pink colour. And here's a fun fact for you, even the FT's home in London, Bracken House, is made from red brick and pink stone. So, as we've discussed already, the FT has led the pack in terms of innovation, and it's likely to pull even further ahead in the coming years. The paper's digital-first strategy really paid off during the pandemic, when its online readership shot up by 250%, helped by the fact that it dropped its paywall for COVID-19 news. Then, when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the FT's maps and visualization of the conflict further cemented its reputation for deep analysis and investigations. It's also ventured into more digital formats like data journalism, themed newsletters, and even short films. However, the FT is still seen as too intellectual or snobbish for many people, and remains heavily business-focused. Individual subscriptions are shockingly expensive, at £39 or £59 a month, which is unaffordable for most of the population. As a global newspaper, it also lacks the local and community-based content provided by other parts of the British media. Nonetheless, the FT's innovative digital strategy puts it in an incredibly strong position going forward, at a time when print journalism is still figuring out how to communicate via new digital platforms. Whatever the future may hold, it will always be important to keep yourself safe online. Fortunately, when it comes to your digital safety, NordVPN has your back. It's an unfortunate reality that online scams and phishing attacks are on the rise, with us constantly bombarded by annoying notifications and emails that we forgot we even signed up to. It's easy to click the wrong link. One seemingly innocent link can compromise security and bring things crashing down. With the protection of NordVPN, though, you can use their threat protection feature to identify potentially suspicious links. Even if you reached a suspicious website, NordVPN's data encryption tools would protect you and your data against a number of other attacks, such as malicious man-in-the-middle breaches. But if things do go wrong, NordVPN's dark web monitoring is always scanning for your compromised details across the entire internet, and can even notify you before you even notice anything's gone wrong. So if you want to securely connect to that free Wi-Fi at your local coffee shop without worrying about someone trying to take a peek at your personal data, you can sign up for a 2-year plan with a massive discount and 4 months free at nordvpn.com/TLDR. We've been told that sometimes our viewers just open a new tab and type in the URL themselves, and while we're certainly glad that you're using the service, you only get the discount and support the channel through that link. So if you wish to get the discount and support independent journalism further, make sure you sign up using our link. That's nordvpn.com/TLDR. Thanks for your support.